first thing that you think about when it comes to your past? For some people, they look at their past and they see it as something that is to be excited about and something that they absolutely loved. For others, you might look at your past and just hope and pray that it was different. So as you all know, I have been so open about my past. I've been open about how being raised by a single parent affected my life, how as a child growing up, I grew up feeling very insecure. I grew up feeling like I'm not good enough. And I grew up really just wanting and craving that love. From a young age, I never believed that I was worthy of being loved. I never believed that love was something that I could have. And so even in my friendships, I would be the person that would just say, please, please love me, etc., etc. So maybe as you're thinking about your past, there's some things that come to your mind as well. But really what I want to say today is that if you are a human being that is on this earth for longer than a day, it means that you've got a past. And instead of running away from your past, the first thing that I'd like to say to you is own it. Sometimes we are unable to move on from our past because we're trying to run away. It's almost like the wind is outside and you are trying to just run away from the wind. Have you ever tried it? I'm sure you haven't because it's impossible. So it's exactly the same thing when it comes to your past. You cannot outrun your past, you cannot hide from your past, and you cannot erase your past. So instead of trying to run away from it, you need to own it. Because the reality is this, when you own your past and you accept your past, it allows you to be able to move on. It allows you to be able to deal with things. So I got to a point in my life when eventually I realized I can't run away. I can't run away from the fact that, yes, things happened, my father wasn't there, but that was just the reality. It's when I actually just owned it and I said, you know what, Lele, this is your life, this is what happened, and how are you going to deal with it, that I actually started to move forward, that I actually started to see some changes. Because if you don't own it, it means you are almost like constantly in this rat race, you are constantly in this cycle, and you are constantly in this wanting to undo it in a sense, and you cannot undo it. So the first thing is own it. What is in your past that has happened? Is it a father not being there, a mother not being there, relationships being broken? No matter what it is, own it. And then the second thing is you need to actually deal with what it is. So for me, how I dealt with things was therapy. I came to a point where I realized I cannot trust men. I cannot be in relationships. And a big thing for me was I will never, believe it or not, ever marry anybody. Because I knew in my mind, if I marry somebody, it was going to end. But then me going for counseling, me going to see a psychologist, I realized that I actually have father issues. I realized that I've actually got love issues. And it was through walking this journey that most of you know that have been following me, that I am married and I'm happily married and I love being married, and I never ever thought that I would be one of those gals that say, yes, get married. So if you are dealing with things and once you've owned it, you've got to then seek the necessary help. I think one thing also with COVID, a lot of people started going for therapy, they started seeing psychologists, they started walking, no matter what it is, because sometimes it's not therapy. Maybe if it's maybe a health journey that affected you from a young age, maybe you need to start doing things towards that. But do not be afraid to actually do what it is that you are meant to do. Do not be afraid to do the hard work, because it's only when you're doing the hard work, it's only when you are actually embracing doesn't mean acceptance, and I think we need to know that. Embracing something doesn't mean you're just going to let it go, but once you've accepted it, you can actually deal with what it is. And perhaps the third thing that I would love to say to all of you is that you can overcome. So your mindset when it comes to dealing with that past and when it comes to looking at those things is you've got to believe that you can overcome. And me saying this, it's not to minimize. I know that some people have had things that are hectic, have had things that are hard to let go of. But what you must remember is that there's absolutely nothing that you are unable to overcome in life. So actually your Yisa, just the name of my business, means to overcome. And the reason why I did it is because my hope is for people to know that it doesn't matter what it is that you've been through. It doesn't matter what it is that has happened. You've got to know that you are able to overcome. So what in your past is holding you back? What in your past is making you hide? You've got to own it. You've got to accept it. You've got to seek the necessary help, and you've got to know that you can overcome. And speaking to a lot of women, one of the things that the past has had on so many of us, myself included, is it's impacted and it has affected how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about our worth. So what do you do with all of that thing that seems like it's this rubbish bag that you've maybe been carrying around when you don't see your worth? First of all, it's just to remind you that no matter what your past is, no matter what you have done, sometimes our past is not necessarily things that have happened to us. Sometimes it's what we have done to people. And there comes a point where we need to forgive. So when it comes to your worth, I guess perhaps it's that. Let's start with that element of self-forgiveness. Do you need to forgive somebody for something that they've done to you? Or do you need to forgive yourself for something that you have done? As I sip on my coffee. The reality is that if you don't forgive, you're unable to move forward. And forgiveness is such a complex conversation. It's such a complex thing. And it's not something that we can just say from now that it's done, but do the necessary things that you need to do in order to forgive. Because if you don't let go of that, if you don't accept that you've done things or people have done things to you and you've got to let go, often a lot of what makes us sit in this past or makes us sit in this not feeling worthy is because we're not forgiving ourselves and we're not forgiving of others. And another thing is, you've got to be kind to yourself. You know, as people, we're so kind to people. We're so kind that you can see a stranger tomorrow on the street and you'll be so kind to them. They haven't done anything, but you've done it. But when it comes to ourselves, so often we're so critical and so often we're not kind to ourselves. And I just want to say and remind you today that you've got to be kind to yourself. You've got to give yourself the grace and the forgiveness and the love and the patience that you give to other people. When you start to move from the past, when you start to take steps, what happens is you sometimes go back, and you've got to give yourself the space to make mistakes. You've got to give yourself the space to be kind to yourself. So for me, I just say, when I see maybe I'm back in the past, I just say, Lele, you're doing it again. So I've got a phrase for myself. I've got a way to bring myself back from what it is that I'm experiencing. So you've got to be kind to yourself. And when it comes to your worth as well, remember that your past does not dictate your worth. I'm going to say that again. Your past does not get actually to dictate your worth. You are worthy with or without a past. You are worthy no matter what it is that has happened to you. You are worthy no matter what it is that you have done. We so often attach our worth to things that we have done. We so often attach our worth to our past. So a lot of people will look at their upbringing, they'll look at things that have happened, and then decide whether they are worthy or not. And today I want to say that you are worthy. So you've got to see yourself as a person that is deserving and worthy of worth, regardless of what it is that has happened. And perhaps one of the ways that you can build that worth, you might ask, Lele, what do we do? You've got to build a strong relationship with yourself. And building a strong relationship with yourself takes time. So I think when we hear this word that build a strong relationship with yourself, some people do it for 1 day or 2 days or like a week. And then when it doesn't happen, they just like, hey, well, it didn't, thanks, it's not for me. But just think about your closest friend at the moment. Think about, or somebody that's in your life. Did it take you a day to build a relationship with them? Did it take you a week to build a relationship with them? Yes, some people connect just off the bat. Some people connect from, you just hit it off. But for you to continue to have a relationship with that person, you had to work at that relationship. And it's exactly the same when it comes to a relationship with yourself. A relationship with yourself takes time. So you've got to take the time to build that relationship with yourself. Ask yourself, what do I like? What do I enjoy about life? What do I enjoy doing? What do I like eating? What makes me happy? So those are questions that you could ask yourself. Because if you don't invest in yourself, because you are also important, and investment with yourself is very important. So you've got to take the time to build that relationship. Take the time to love yourself. The question is, do you love yourself? Loving yourself is not just a momentary thing that you do now, but loving yourself means loving yourself with that past. Loving yourself with all that has happened to you. Because we're saying that you cannot run away from your past, but you can also still build your worth when it comes to that. So if you're wondering, what can I do today? How can I live my life differently? The first thing is, let it go. Use your past as a guide. So I often say, when it comes to me, like I said, because my worth and my relationship with myself was greatly affected because of my past, I use it as a guide. I use it as how do I make sure that other people never feel like they're not worthy? How do I make sure that other people feel loved? How do I love my husband wholeheartedly and love my children wholeheartedly. So use your past as just that guide. Use it as lessons that you can get. There's so many people that I've spoken to, and they have used their past in that way. So something happened to them and they used it for the positive. So what are you going to do today that's going to be different? So before we end off, it's just that reminder that if you are living, if you're on earth, if you are existing, you've got a past. Nobody's past is better or worse than the other person. What's really important is the mindset and the perspective that you have on the situation, as a perspective that you have when it comes to your life right now. It's also just remembering that no matter what happened, it does not dictate. If you don't hear anything I've said to you today, remember that it does not get to dictate what happens tomorrow. You've got a choice today to wake up and decide that this is how I want my life to look and my life to feel. And if you've enjoyed listening to this video, stay tuned for many more videos that we'll be doing. Cheers.